ASEAN way is caring. ASEAN way is sharing. No matter the distance between us, ASEAN still unites as one. Friendship still holds our hearts tight to keep us fight as one. No harm can defeat us, no pain can frighten us, since we are always one.
Harmony is what we believe in. No one will be left behind. So we can fly as one, blow our love to the sky. Since we are always one,
Let's share our spirits to heal the world. Let our consonants speak out loud. Let the light from the east shine through the clouds. ASEAN still unites as one. Let's share our spirits to heal the world. Let our consonants speak out loud. Let the light from the east shine through the clouds. ASEAN still unites as one. Let's share our spirits to heal the world. Let our consonants speak out loud. Let the light from the east shine through the clouds. ASEAN still unites as one. Let's share our spirits to heal the world. Let our consonants speak out loud. Let the light from the east shine through the clouds. ASEAN still unites as one. ASEAN still unites as one. As it is caring, as it is sharing, ASEAN still unites as one. As it is caring, as it is sharing, ASEAN still unites as one. As it is caring, as it is sharing, ASEAN still unites as one.
Good morning, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the online book launch of ASEAN-EU Partnership, The Untold Story. My name is Reza Haryanti from the Asean Secretariat. I will be your MC today. Before we begin, I would like to remind you of the following information. Firstly, all attendees' microphones and videos will be muted throughout the event. The hand raise feature will also be disabled. Secondly, attendees are invited to submit questions through the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Please indicate your name, organization, and the name of the speaker you would like to address your question to. The question will be channeled by the moderator to the speakers during the Q&A session. Lastly, this event will be recorded and the recording will be available online on the ASEAN Secretariat YouTube channel after the event. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. In this book launch event, the Secretary General of ASEAN, His Excellency Dato Lim Jock Hoi, will deliver the welcome remarks, followed by the poster signing and a group photo. In the panel discussion, we will have three distinguished speakers, Professor Tomiko, His Excellency Igor Trismans, and Mr. Richard von Harak. The discussion will be moderated by Dr. Yo Lewi. After panel discussion, we will have 20 minutes of Q&A session. And to close the event, Her Excellency Ambassador Kok Li Peng will deliver her closing remarks.
Okay.
On behalf of the organizer, we would like to thank you for joining us in this special event. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is now my pleasure to invite the Secretary General of ASEAN, His Excellency Dato Lim Jock Hoi, to deliver his welcome remarks. Excellency, the floor is yours.
Your Excellency Tomiko, Ambassador at Large to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Singapore, Your Excellency Kok Li Peng, Permanent Representative of Singapore to ASEAN, Your Excellency Igor Trismans, Ambassador of the European Union to ASEAN, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning. Allow me to start by expressing my appreciation to Ambassador Tomiko and Dr. Lei Wai Yo for inviting me to deliver these welcome remarks at the launch of your book on ASEAN-EU partnership, The Untold Story, and to share our thought on the ASEAN-EU relations over the past years, especially in this unusual time of COVID-19 pandemic. This Untold Story is an important part of ASEAN as we continue to place importance in developing strong partnership with our external partners, including the EU, as we work towards the realization of the ASEAN Community Vision 2025. This was again reiterated by our leaders at the 37th ASEAN Summit and related summits held 2 weeks ago as we continue to advance a cohesive and responsive ASEAN under the Vietnam chairmanships. As the world's two most important and successful regional organizations, ASEAN-EU relations has been witnessing a growing number of dialogue and engagement, as well as significant growth in multifaceted cooperation as guided by the ASEAN-EU Plan of Action, spanning across various areas from non-traditional security, economic, sustainable development, to environmental issue, disaster management, and human rights. While this pandemic has closed many of our borders, it has drawn ASEAN closer together to many of our external partners, including the EU, who have stepped up their cooperation with ASEAN in mitigating the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. We welcome the outcome of the ASEAN-EU Ministerial Video Conference on COVID-19 held in March this year, as well as the announcement of EU mobilization of a Team Europe package of over 800 million euro for the ASEAN region. As we collaborate to continue to address the challenges posed by COVID-19 pandemic, we need strongly advocate our support to vaccine multilateralization and the goal of ensuring affordable, fair, and equitable access to safe and effective vaccine for all. We will continue our momentum to enhance cooperation in public health emergency and its social economic impacts in the region, including through the implementation of the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, for over 4 decades, cooperation with the ASEAN and EU have strengthened across all ASEAN community pillars and have culminated in both sides agreeing in principle to elevate the ASEAN-EU dialogue relation to a strategic partnership at the 22nd ASEAN-EU ministerial meeting in Brussels in January 2019, subject to detail and timing to be worked out. Furthermore, the pandemic, as well as the rising geopolitical uncertainty, also underscore the need for both sides to intensify cooperation and strengthen resilience, uphold regional and global peace, restore confidence in free trade and rule-based multilateralization, as to work towards sustainable development for the benefit of our people. As one of the major foreign investors and trading partners of ASEAN, the EU and ASEAN have shared interests in safeguarding free and open trade, including transparent, non-discriminatory, and rule-based multilateral trading system. Towards this end, we welcome the progress made by ASEAN-EU FTA Joint Working Group in developing framework setting out the parameters of a future ASEAN-EU free trade agreements, which would contribute meaningfully to post-pandemic recovery for our two regions and to create stronger and more resilient supply chains to deliver new opportunity for our businesses and people. We also look forward to the conclusion of the negotiation of ASEAN-EU Comprehensive Air Transport Agreement, CATA, which is ongoing to further enhance connectivity between our two regions in bringing about greater trade, investment, and people-to-people flow. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as like-minded partners in integration, ASEAN and EU shares a natural partnership. Both sides should continue to reflect our shared visions and priorities, as well as to take appropriate steps to realize the full potential of our partnership. I believe that the ASEAN-EU ministerial meeting next week will be an opportune time for us to review and chart the future direction of our relations. I hope that the insights for today's webinars can also fit to the new chapter in ASEAN-EU partnership. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, SG. May we now ask you to please sign the book's poster and hold it up on the screen for a few seconds. Picture. Thank you very much, SG. The book has now been officially launched in Jakarta by His Excellency Dato Lim Jock Hoi, the Secretary General of ASEAN. SG, please stay with us for a moment. Now, may I invite His Excellency Dato Lim Jock Hoi, Ambassador Tomiko, Ambassador Trismans, Mr. Wichat von Hara, and Dr. Yo Lewi to be ready on the screen for a group photo. Okay, ready on 3. 1, 2, 3, and smile. Thank you, SG and Excellencies. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our moderator for the panel discussion and also one of the editors of the book, Dr. Yo Lei. Dr. Yo is Director of the European Union Center in Singapore. She is also Council Secretary at the Singapore Institute of International Affairs, Adjunct Fellow at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies, and Adjunct Faculty at the Singapore Management University. Her research interests revolve around comparative regionalism, multilateralism, and governance networks. She has written extensively on issues pertaining to Asia-Europe relations, specifically on the ASEAN process and EU-ASEAN relations. Dr. Yo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, thank you very much, Ibu Riza, and good morning to all excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for attending this book launch and the panel discussion. First, I'm asked to give a little broad overview of the book, but before I do so, please allow me to express my sincere thanks to the following people. First, to Ambassador Tommy Koh for seeding the idea of this book and giving me the honor to work with him as co-editor of the book. To all the contributing authors who have given us their time to write the excellent essays that have provided us with a very comprehensive and multifaceted look into the ASEAN-EU partnership from a Southeast Asian perspective. To His Excellency Datuk Lim, ASEAN Secretary General, for honoring us with his opening remarks, and to Ambassador Kok Lee Peng, the Singapore Permanent Rep to ASEAN, for agreeing to do the closing remarks. I also want to thank the EU Ambassador to ASEAN, Ambassador Trismans, and the Vice Chair of the European Chamber of Commerce, Indonesia, and also an Executive Board member of the ASEAN EU Business Council, Mr. Richard von Harak, for agreeing to take part in a panel discussion. Last but not least, my heartfelt thanks to colleagues in the ASEAN Secretariat for organizing and hosting this book launch and panel discussion. So, what is in this book? I will just give you a quick, broad sweep of the contents and some key messages of this book that we have co-edited. The book provides a Southeast Asian perspective on the ASEAN-EU relationship and its potential. It's divided into 4 sections. The first section contains essays that look into how much the partnership between the EU and ASEAN has developed since we first established formal ties in 1977. The essays in this section also set out the very comprehensive partnership from politics to economics and cooperation on security and development. The second section of the book contains essays that look into our differences and similarities, and also highlight some of the divergent approaches we take on issues like human rights and the plight of the Rohingyas in Myanmar. The third section of the book is one of the richest, containing 10 essays written by our respective ASEAN friends on the ties that their respective countries have with the EU. The final section of the book is where we look into how the interregional partnership can be further strengthened. While editing this book, I can see one very clear message that strings through all the essays. That is, we should not allow our differences to derail efforts to strengthen our partnership. The current relationship between ASEAN and the EU is very good, but could be better. In an increasingly fragmented world driven by the intense rivalry between China and the US, it is ever more important for the EU and ASEAN to step up our engagement to build an inclusive, multilateral, rule-based order. Some other key takeaways of this book that I see are that, as mentioned, I think the main message is ASEAN and EU must focus on the broader strategic picture and not let our differences stop us from moving forward in areas where we have convergent interests. It is important for the two sides to develop a deeper understanding of each other's history and culture, and accept that given our diversities, we will have disagreement from time to time. But we can still find creative and new ways to reach compromises and move forward. I think the EU has significantly stepped up its presence in ASEAN and engagement with ASEAN in recent years, but I think more can still be done to raise the visibility of the EU in the region. ASEAN also needs to be more visible as a collective entity in Europe and broaden its engagement with the different EU institutions and agencies and with the European civil society. Both should renew efforts to reinvigorate the negotiations towards the EU-ASEAN FTA. We should also, as His Excellency Dr. Lim mentioned, conclude the negotiations for the comprehensive air transport agreement, taking into account the need to revitalize the aviation industry, making air travel safe and sustainable in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. We also have to strengthen cooperation on human security, especially in the area of public health and pandemic preparedness, and work together to co-create rules and standards in the new areas of cooperation, such as in digital trade and cybersecurity. So these are some of the key takeaways from the book. I hope you would go and buy this book to dig deeper into the substance of the ASEAN-EU partnership. This book, as you know, can be ordered online directly from the publisher, World Scientific, on their website, worldscientific.com, or other online platforms such as Amazon. With that brief commercial, I'm very pleased now to turn to the more exciting part of today's program, the panel discussion on the future of ASEAN-EU partnership with our three very distinguished panelists. We will begin the panel discussion with brief opening remarks by the three panelists before we open this to all of you for comments and questions. Now, please allow me to briefly introduce the three panelists. With us today are first Ambassador Tommy Koh, Ambassador at Large from Singapore, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Professor Tommy Koh is a fervent supporter of both the EU and ASEAN and thinks that these two regional organizations have often been underrated. They are the two more successful regional organizations that have played important roles in the peace and stability of their respective regions. Ambassador Koh was involved in the drafting of the ASEAN Charter and as founding executive director of the Asia-Europe Foundation, played an important role in promoting ties between the two regions. Our second panelist is Ambassador Igor Trismans, the EU ambassador to ASEAN. His position is testimony to the importance that the EU places on its relations with ASEAN. Prior to this current position, Ambassador Trismans was member of the cabinet of the EU's High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. His responsibilities included Asia and the Pacific, cultural diplomacy, transport, and fisheries. Last but not least is Mr. Richard von Harak, the Vice Chair of the European Chamber of Commerce in Indonesia and Executive Board Member of the EU-ASEAN Business Council. Richard, a trained economist, is also the President Director of PT Jawa Power and has worked over 25 years in different business development functions for IT, telecoms, and infrastructure. So we have these three distinguished panelists that are going to share with us first some of their views on how the EU relationship, how EU-ASEAN relationship can progress and move forward. So I would like first to give the mic to Ambassador Tommy Koh.
Thank you, Lei Hui. I would like to begin by thanking Ibu Reza for being our MC, and I join you in thanking the ASEAN Secretary General, Dr. Lim Jock Hoi, for his excellent welcoming remark. In the few minutes allocated to me, I'd like to make 3 points. First, I want to affirm my faith in these two regional organizations. Both of them face many challenges. The European Union is faced with the imminent, or rather is faced with the after effect of the exit by the United Kingdom, immigration challenge, and so on. In the case of ASEAN, one of our principal challenges in the years ahead is whether we can maintain our unity and centrality. I'm confident that both ASEAN and EU will be able to overcome their challenges. I want to also say that while EU is not a model for ASEAN, the success of the European integration project is a constant inspiration for ASEAN. That's my first point. Second, I want to make a provocative comment that the European Union is underperforming in ASEAN and ASEAN is underperforming in Europe. The EU is not sufficiently appreciated by the leaders of ASEAN, and I suspect that ASEAN is not sufficiently appreciated by the leaders in Europe. My impression is that European leaders are not fully aware of the economic and strategic significance of Southeast Asia and of ASEAN to Europe. For example, I doubt if they are aware that in a recent survey conducted by the EU-ASEAN Business Council, it was found that the European business community in ASEAN believes that the region which gives them the most economic opportunities in the world is ASEAN. I will now go to my third and final point. I would like to urge ASEAN and EU to conclude expeditiously the ASEAN-EU Comprehensive Air Transport Agreement. As Levi said, this will give a much-needed boost to our ailing aviation and travel industries. I would also urge the ASEAN-EU Working Group on the FTA to conclude its work as soon as possible. And here, I want to make a provocative comment to my European friends. The recent signing of the 15-member Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement is a wake-up call for Europe. There was an earlier wake-up call when the 11-member Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership came into force. So my message to Europe is, waste no time. Please engage Asia and ASEAN. This is a region of many opportunities, and there's a lot of goodwill here for the European Union, and you should engage us more proactively and with a sense of commitment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Paul, for the three main points you have made, very provocative. Now I would like to hear from Ambassador Trismans to see what is the EU perspective regards to how it looked at the relationship with ASEAN. Ambassador Trismans, please.
Lewi, also my thanks, of course, to the Secretary General for gracing us with opening remarks. Thank you to Professor Ko for being with us today, and for the book that, of course, I have written from, rather read from start to finish. Good day to Richard from Harak, and of course, a good day to Ambassador Cockley Peng, my country coordinator here in Jakarta. What I thought I'd do is maybe describe what we see as the three main interests that we want to pursue here in ASEAN, and also maybe elaborate on how we would like to do that. The first interest we see in ASEAN is obviously a political one, or rather a geopolitical one. President Charles Michel was able to address the ASEAN Business Summit just some 10 days ago. And he made it very clear that a strong ASEAN is in Europe's interests, that we want to see ASEAN's internal integration through ASEAN community building, but we also want to see ASEAN reinforcing its external positioning through ASEAN's centrality within the broader regional architecture. So for us, a strong ASEAN will be able to manage tension, and a strong ASEAN will be a like-minded partner for us when it comes to multilateralism. So we will continue to speak out in favor of ASEAN centrality. And I would even argue that amongst ASEAN partners, we're the one who's probably most in favor of ASEAN centrality, not just in words, but also in deeds. We want to partner with ASEAN in multilateralism. We all know the challenges of climate change and the political challenges, but we now also face the challenge of COVID-19. And we have said from the start, we need a multilateral way forward. That's why we invest so heavily in the COVAX facility, now with €500 million. That's in addition to what some of our member states do. And frankly, that's much, much larger than any partner in ASEAN. So that will be one way forward. Secondly, we want to partner in favor of a rules-based international order. And that means that we will continue to speak out for international law, that we will continue to speak out in favor of UNCLOS and its full implementation. For us, this also means that we want to partner more and better with you when it comes to defense and military issues. One of the things that is maybe most untold, to quote the title of your book, is the advance we made in terms of defense and security over the last 5 years. We don't have a European army, and maybe we will never have, but we have a defense union, we have a command structure, we have military staff, we have an industrial and scientific component, 6 military missions around the world as we speak. So there is potential there for the EU and ASEAN to partner more and better beyond the non-traditional security issues on which we already partner, such as counterterrorism, cybersecurity, and so on and so forth. Just recently, we concluded a framework participation agreement with Vietnam, which allows Vietnamese soldiers to take part in our European military missions. It's these kinds of incremental steps forward which I think bode well for the future. So our first interest is a geopolitical one. Our second interest, and you're absolutely right, is an economic one. ASEAN countries experience solid growth, expected to be the world's fourth largest economy by 2030. We all see a rapidly emerging middle class offering many trade and business opportunities for Europe. So I just want to be clear, we do want a region-to-region FTA. We do want a region-to-region FTA, which is modern, comprehensive, ambitious, and which adds value to the work of our businesses. And that's also, again, the message that President Michel addressed at the Business Summit. That's the message that Executive Vice President Dombrovskis addressed to the EU-ASEAN Business Summit just a few days ago. We also look forward to concluding the comprehensive air transport agreement, which will be good for consumers, for the price of their plane tickets, for the safety of the flights, but it will also be good for business. And that's not innocent, especially in these times of the COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, we want to work with ASEAN on the enabling environment. Issues such as data protection are growing areas of our joint work with ASEAN, and the larger agenda of connectivity as well. The third interest for us is a green interest. We see rapid growth in ASEAN, but we also see a rapid growth of CO2 emissions. in the absence of any significant decarbonization, energy-related greenhouse gas emissions will almost double by 2040 in ASEAN. So there is a lot of work to be done, again, together. We have long supported ASEAN projects related to biodiversity, new projects on sustainable growth of peatlands. But we want to do more, we want to do better when it comes to, for example, renewable energy and so on and so forth. A vast agenda lies ahead of us. So these are the three interests I wanted to put to you and the way we pursue them. Now, a last word on what you addressed, Professor, in terms of visibility and communication, which I do realize is an issue. We do have a visibility deficit. I realize that every day. Few people know that we are the largest development partner of ASEAN. Few people know that we are the most comprehensive partner. We have 18 or more thematic dialogues, from high-speed computing to construction standards to just this week, the high-level dialogue on climate and environment, last week, the dialogue on transport, and so on and so forth. So we do know that we need to do more and better on this front. But I would beg for your indulgence by saying that you also need a receptive environment. It's not enough to give a press conference. You'd also need people to write about it. You just don't post on the social media. You also need people to relay your message. And that's hard enough in Europe to communicate on the EU. But here in ASEAN, we do see that the region is somewhat focused on China and the United States. I think maybe several citizens of ASEAN could quote exactly which county in Wisconsin or Georgia voted for whom. I doubt that many people would be able to say who has actually won the European Parliament elections. Although one might argue it is equally important for the future of the world. So I just wanted to say that we are aware of the visibility deficit that we have, but I would say it is slightly more complicated than trying to be more active, which indeed we are. So thank you very much again, and frankly, my congratulations on the book, but also on the debate that it has generated in ASEAN and indeed in Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for sharing your thoughts on the areas of focus and the areas of interest that the EU has in this region. And of course, for addressing the issue, the very complex issue of how to raise the visibility of such a complex entity like the European Union. We'll come back to that. I'm sure there'll be some questions on that, some follow-up questions on that. But now, can I pass the mic to Mr. Richard to give us his the business perspective on the EU-ASEAN partnership. Mr. Richard, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Excellencies, friends, and guests. I would like to congratulate the organizers to let us take part in this panel. And yes, I just want to start with noticing for our Asian friends that we, the Europeans, have followed the guidance of the organizers to wear this beautiful blue dress. So Professor Ko, we are completely culturally compliant in following instructions, and that is also one of the things that I would like to point out later. I'm part of the Untold story in Indonesia, and I couldn't agree more with you, Professor Ko. I would like to applaud the conclusion of the RCEP. Just to come back to my Untold story in Indonesia, I'm part of the team that is working on the SEPA of EU and Indonesia, and we have submitted a number of recommendations, views, and wishes to the negotiators of the EU. And then a second step was to compile a joint recommendations or wishes or views a statement together with our counterpart in Indonesia, the Chamber of Commerce called Kadin. This joint paper was presented to the Vice President of Indonesia and his European counterpart in Brussels. We were extremely proud of that. The next milestone was also a pretty unique and untold story that together with the Ministry of Trade, Kadin, Apindo, which is the Employers Association, the European delegation, and ourselves, we went around the country and marketed SEPA, sharing the benefits of free trade with all the stakeholders in order to market the importance of this. We had an idea of a second version, which got stuck in all kinds of excuses. We also planned and want to build a Indo-Cham in Brussels. That is also still far away. But I do believe, and it was already said by His Excellency Professor Ko and Igor, that we really need more marketing. And this marketing is cumbersome and costly. And this is one of the reasons why we still don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. And this is very, very unfortunate in the case of Indonesia, because Indonesia and Europe have totally complementary products, and we have a huge surplus on the side of Indonesia with 8 billion. The last thing, which is very dramatic for Indonesia, is that the plus point for Europe that we have a SEPA agreement with Vietnam, and my host country is losing out on FDI as we speak. That is very, very sad for us here on the ground. And what we realized in this whole process, and that's what I could now reread in this excellent book, is that why we still, after 6 years, we still don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. And I would say this book comes at an excellent time. Professor Ko said already a warning shot was held, so it's already very close to past excellent time, because it highlights the global close viewpoints that our groups have, the regional groups have, not just on the multilateral rules-based global trading system, but also on other areas such as sustainability. We could discuss on that, climate change action, and of course, at the moment, the need to tackle the ongoing pandemic and to protect lives and livelihood as a result. In my opinion, this book makes clear, reiterates, and should be read by everybody that our relationship is strong, deep, and already very comprehensive. There's much to herald. But in order not to make this too positive, we need to do more. There is so many that we have to improve on, and the investment, the trade and investment relationship has been at the forefront of our relations for many years, and the Europeans have been number 1 or 2 in aggregate and in each country. The first or second best trading partner, largest trading partner, but these rankings are slipping, and that is not good, because our counterparts, the governments, are looking at these rankings. And there's another thing that is very worrisome, that, for example, in Indonesia, we don't even have an aggregate number to report on. So our first European investment partner in Indonesia is ranked at the lower half. However, and also for 2019, we in aggregate we may decrease to a 3rd position, despite the very, very strong sentiment, and the devil is in the detail with the numbers, as we know. The EU ABC business sentiment survey has again found the overwhelming support for ASEAN from our members. 53% of the respondents still rank ASEAN as the best, the region with the best economic opportunities in the next 5 years. We all know that there's excellent people-to-people connection that we have been fostered through all the activities, and the deep-rooted relationships in areas of economic development, security, as already mentioned, and the significant support from the EU, for example, in the area of transnational crime. There's a lot of positives to be mentioned. But in the current global geopolitical climate, I personally see an ASEAN that would like the EU to step up to the plate much more and play a more active role in supporting the social and economic development of the region. Here in this forum, and probably all our guests know the exceptional support that the EU has provided in Southeast Asia through a variety of aid and development programs. Just a recap, $2 billion of support at a mix of regional and national levels across a variety of programs. These are to be applauded loudly. Unfortunately, again, we are not very good at marketing ourselves as a strong supporter, because also our support is softer and capacity building in nature rather than involving the pouring of concrete. However, from my marketing perspective, concrete is very visible for a long time. The EU needs to do more to highlight the support that it gives to the region and leverage that support better for its other aims and ambitions in the region and globally. There's also a need for an increased political engagement. It has been now over 2 years since a European Trade Commissioner met their ASEAN counterparts. We have ongoing trade discussions with several countries in the region and still ambitions for region-to-region FTA, something that European business is overwhelmingly in favor of. 98%, of course, say that we need this. Given the ASEAN as an engine of growth and being the largest, third largest trading partner outside of continental Europe, it is disappointing that the region does not get the attention it deserves. And mentioning on the agenda at the right place, I would say, after the speech of President Jean-Michel in the agenda of the new commission. So our survey found that only 25% of our respondents feel that the support is sufficient. Now I enter the slippery slope after asking for more communication, but we do have to address a number of irritants that hinder or are in the way of the current relationship and that need to be addressed. They are harming the standing of the EU and preventing the move to a strategic partnership, as already mentioned, blocking the signing of the first region-to-region air service agreement, Qatar, and just 2 examples which undoubtedly benefit both sides and, of course, the business, and I represent the business side. Taking the relationship further means we need to tackle these irritants. It requires risk-taking and from both sides, and compromise from both sides. So we need to find a solution for the palm oil dispute between EU and Asia and Malaysia that has been rumbling on for far too long. It will require a greater degree of humility and understanding from the EU than it has shown hitherto, and a less dogmatic and entrenched position from the ASEAN member states involved. This taking of the dispute to the WTO by Indonesia might actually end up at a good point, being a good point, but we are losing year by year, and a resolution from my perspective could be found and negotiated. Both sides are right, so it's about recognizing the significant advantages that made by Indonesia and Malaysia, on the one side, and the other thing is that Indonesia and Malaysia accept and recognize that there is no ban on palm oil exports to the EU. Just in end of August, His Excellency Igor tweeted that the volume went up by a lot. Maybe we have actual figures now. This is a mine territory, but I need to address it. We need to go on with this. The other irritant is the high morals and objectives that we expect from ASEAN. There's nothing wrong with expecting that, but you can read in the book, maybe between the lines, that this may be in the way of reaching an agreement. And that what we call in Indonesia satu persatu. We should take it step by step. But of course, I know also the European view on these things, that we say we have this comprehensive package that we want to should address in a block. So ASEAN, of course, should also acknowledge the negotiation aspect in discussing this comprehensive agreement. The EU actually represents a great number of opportunities for ASEAN. Things like the Green Deal are not policies to be worried about, but policies to be embraced, which can in themselves bring benefit to ASEAN through positioning the region companies better to access the European market and helping the region deal better also with the climate change. Taking this existing very good relationship further, achieving the aim of a strategic partnership should be our target and ambition from both sides. It will benefit everyone politically, socially, and economically. So I personally, and together with all the members, hope that these irritants can be dealt with, high-level politician engagement can be stepped up again, and further progress can be made on trade, investment, and support for the areas, also for environment. The chambers, the members, and we will support at the best of our abilities. Thank you very much. I give back the microphone.
Thank you, Richard, for that very frank expose about some of the irritants in our relationship and how we can overcome some of these irritants so that we can move forward much faster. So just to follow up some questions, I have already received one or two questions, but before that, I thought I might like to come back to Ambassador Cole and ask him about Ambassador, you talk often that the EU is an inspiration, but not a model for ASEAN, and we will develop our own model, taking into account our own history, cultures, and diversities. But at the same time, we can continue to learn from the experiences of the EU. So what is one thing that you really think ASEAN can learn from the EU and should really learn from the EU and at this moment? Prof. Cole?
Yeah, thank you, Lei Wei. I think one very important lesson ASEAN can learn from the European Union is that in addition to the ASEAN way of doing things, we need to strengthen our institutions. We need to have better rules. We need to have a culture of delivering on our commitments. I think that's a very important lesson I personally learned from the European Union.
Thank you. And what about, what do you think, is there anything that the EU can learn from ASEAN?
Well, it'll be presumptuous for me, to say what the European Union can learn from us. But I would say that the European Union and Commission is in danger of over-regulating. And when you over-regulate, you impinge into the autonomy of the citizens' rights. You impose restrictions on their economic freedom. And as a result, the European Union has become quite unpopular among European citizens, you know. So I like to give the story of my visit to the European Parliament in Strasbourg some years ago, when I was invited to give a presentation on the Asia-Europe Foundation. And I found to my surprise that the European Parliament was spending a week debating what is chocolate. And I said to them that, shouldn't you leave that to the citizen to decide, you know, whether a product is chocolate or not the chocolate. And if they prefer to buy a Cadbury chocolate, which continental Europe doesn't accept as chocolate, that's their freedom, you know. So when you impose too many restrictions, you give Brussels a bad name. So if there's any lesson I'd like to share with them, this will be one lesson. And the second lesson I want to share with them is that you may feel very strongly about things, but the question I would ask my European colleagues to think about is it wise for you to impose sanctions against other countries? Do sanctions work? My view is that sanctions don't work. And sanctions don't punish the people you want to punish, but punish the citizens, the workers, the people who should not be punished. So those are 2 points I want to commend to the attention of my European good friends.
Thank you very much, Prof. Koh. Ambassador Trismans, I'm not sure whether you have any direct response to those remarks. Ambassador Trismans?
At the same time, so maybe just a few words. I mean, maybe just say what we can learn from ASEAN is, I think, a sense of identity. There was a very interesting webinar where I listened to the prof a while ago on the issue of identity, and I think it's hard to find somebody in ASEAN who would say bad things about ASEAN. Well, in the EU, you can find that all the time. It's a continental sport. So I think that's definitely something we can learn from ASEAN. Now, there's all kinds of things that definitely the EU can improve on. On the example of you know, I'm Belgian myself, so for me, probably I would think that Brussels, European Brussels, would have nothing to do with telling Belgians what chocolate is. But if I listen to what the prof said, I think you might have more of an argument about the regulation tout court by the state, be that at the European level or at national level, of issues such as chocolate, rather than to say it should be at a European level or at a national level. I think from where we're sitting rules, and there should be level playing field. I think just one last point on sanctions. It's true that we have a number of, say, European sanctions, but I would argue that also ASEAN has sanctions on other countries. They are UN sanctions, such as on the DPRK, but it is true that we top up some of these sanctions bilaterally through European sanctions, because we had found sometimes I had sometimes effect.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Trismans. There is a question from Sebastian Gries, who is the Program Manager of Qualifications, Frameworks and Quality Assurance, the European Union support to higher education in the ASEAN region. And this is addressed to Professor Tommy Koh. he asked, what would be 3 key actions that the EU needed to implement to raise its partnership with ASEAN to an adequate level corresponding to the region's significance? And what are some of the missed opportunities in ASEAN-EU relations over the last 20 years? Ambassador Cole? Prof?
Okay, so here's my wish list. First, conclude the comprehensive air transport agreement within the next 6 months. Second, conclude the ASEAN-EU free trade agreement within the next 12 months. And third, have an ASEAN-EU summit on the related problem of COVID-19, the equitable distribution of the vaccines to countries rich and poor, and how to bring about a green and sustainable recovery. I think if we can have such an ASEAN-EU summit, it will be timely and it will grab people's mind share. At the moment, the problem is European Union is doing so many good things in ASEAN, but they are not known, you know? And the EU somehow doesn't enjoy the mind share that China, the United States, Japan do. So those are my 3 wishes.
Thank you, Prof. Ko. I think particularly the last one, I think is perhaps something that the ministers hopefully will discuss in their meeting next week. There's another question that asked about Brexit, and of course after Brexit, the UK has requested to be a dialogue partner of ASEAN. So I think they wanted the views of the panelists with regards to the request by the UK to be a dialogue partner of ASEAN. Perhaps Prof. Ko, again, you can start.
Okay.
What is ASEAN's position on this?
I think that the issue was discussed recently. The United Kingdom wanted to be accepted as a dialogue partner on the ground of succession. They say they were part of the European Union. The European Union is a dialogue partner of ASEAN, and they have inherited this right. The ASEAN side said, no, we can't accept this argument. So the UK has to apply to be a dialogue partner of ASEAN and to go through the due process.
Ambassador Trismans, do you have any views on this? On UK's applying to be the dialogue partner of ASEAN?
ASEAN has to say about this. They will remain a very steady, a very close partner to the EU, and we are very like-minded in many respects. So from that point of view, definitely the UK is much more than an ally. But this will be, of course, ASEAN's decision.
Thank you. Another question on the higher education from Darren, who asked about, who'd like to hear from the panel on their views of the development of an ASEAN higher education area to enhance people-to-people connectivity and an ASEAN identity. I know the EU has been very successful in its Erasmus program, and in order to create student mobility, and in that process create this identity amongst the young people. And the EU Share program in some way is trying to get ASEAN members, ASEAN countries, young people, students to come together. Is there any other way that we can promote this kind of an ASEAN higher education area, similar to Erasmus? And I personally, as the director of the EU Center, we have been very supportive of trying to create this kind of much more mobility also amongst the ASEAN countries, replicate or to at least to be inspired by the Erasmus program in the EU to try and of course the Bologna process. But I wonder whether Prof. Ko also has anything to add on this, how we can encourage sort of an ASEAN higher education area in order to create more people-to-people connectivity.
Lei Wei, maybe we should bring in Richard, who made such an excellent presentation. No, I'm sorry that the last two questions have not involved him, so I want to invite him to make a comment if he wishes to.
Yes, perhaps for Richard, you mentioned about the RCEP and all that. So seen from the business perspective, what do you think are some of the real challenges or obstacles towards concluding a EU-ASEAN FTA?
Okay, first of all, again, I mean, I think that the RCEP is a fantastic achievement, and I'm extremely jealous. I'm reading now through the chapters, and it is not as comprehensive as what is in the SEPA, and we are aiming for a much more intense content of our comprehensive partnership agreement. But it's all in the mind. I mean, in inflation is psychologically, and the FDI is in Vietnam jumped after the perspective of a trade agreement. So for me, it's all a psychological trigger, and we. Since being now involved for 6 years, I see it so close in front of me, and I want to be part of it. And so what I don't understand, to be honest, and maybe I'm not, it's above my pay grade to understand the complexity that is unraveling itself in each of these chapters. In Indonesia, we have now this fantastic omnibus law effort, which is one of the biggest reforms since long time, let's say. And there's many things that I see that our negotiators in Europe have pushed that now are being addressed. The opening of the markets, transparent tenders is on our wish list. There's a lot about a free movement of labor that is addressed. So there is maybe some things we can copy. And then Kadin friends have always said, as long as it is at what we concluded with Australia or what you concluded with Vietnam, we should agree on. So for me, I'm a simple person. You just map these things and you are ready. So, and the rest you put on a timeline. I'm sorry, I'm very simple on these things. The only thing I really would like to stress is that it's all about communication. And I've grown up and I see that this beautiful European peace instrument, this beautiful freedom instrument that our forefathers have created, was at risk by this populist movement, and that hurts me so much. Although I did not take part in the Second World War, but our forefathers have been able to build the European Union shortly after killing each other. So that we are not entitled to risk this, in my opinion. So I really urge everybody to see how beautiful the EU is and to copy that as much as possible. And then, on the other hand, also be strict. We cannot allow the recent discussions in Europe. We cannot allow to spend our German taxpayers' money if the basic human rights are not held up. So I really applaud this initiative from the EU. For ASEAN, again, please, it's all about psychology. Let's conclude something that is maybe not as ambitious, but gives us the framework to work. And then I'm happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Prof.
Yeah.
Ko, you want to add something?
Yes, I want to thank Richard. I agree with him that an ASEAN-EU FTA works for both sides and will be very timely, given the RCEP and CPTPP. I think the political will on the ASEAN side is there. The question is there political will on the European side? And if not, why not? Maybe Igor can explain. Is there a reluctance on the part of Brussels? And if so, why? What's the problem?
So Ambassador Trismans, you have the floor to answer that question. Is there a political will from the EU to quickly conclude the EU-ASEAN FTA?
Well, there definitely is will to conclude an EU-ASEAN FTA. I think ASEAN has been very good in putting this forward as a political objective and something to achieve. I think what I would call for is that the same commitment is reflected when we have the discussions of the joint working group, and that if we do have a debate on procurement, that there is a certain willingness on the ASEAN side to take that up. If there is a discussion on services, that we see a willingness on the part of the ASEAN negotiators to take that up. If we discuss the competition chapter, that there is some willingness from ASEAN to discuss that. The same on more simple issues. So I think at the negotiation table, we don't find that willingness. So I think it's good to say that ASEAN wants it, but I think it would be even better if the ASEAN ministers instructed their negotiators to come forward with a good and flexible position. Can
I reply to Igor?
Yes, please.
I want to reply. Igor, the joint working group is not a negotiating body. You know, it's supposed to study the feasibility of launching a negotiation. ASEAN has concluded so many FTAs and EPAs with so many dialogue partners. The European Union should hold us to what we have accepted in these other agreements and say, so I mean, let's launch a negotiation. We're wasting our time in the joint working group, no? The joint working group is not a negotiating body. Its mandate is not to conclude an FTA. It is a preparatory step. So why do we need this preparatory step? We're just wasting everybody's time.
I'm not sure whether Ambassador Trismans wants to reply to that, or if not, we just move on to the last question for the session. Ambassador Igor?
But I would like to say something, again, unqualified maybe, but for example, for this palm oil thing, it is necessary to come to discuss now the methodology for determining the foundation for the definition of the database. If we don't come we can later, we are complaining about how it was done, right? But at the moment they are discussing how to do it. So this is the land use thing, right? If we don't define that how to determine that it was indeed high risk or not, then it is very difficult to improve our the methodology. That's why I would like to endorse that we have to go to the working groups, because the negotiators may wait for the input of that, and we are going in circles on this in this one topic. So I mean, both sides are right, but we need visionary leadership to get out of these things. Thank you.
I want to reply to Richard.
Please.
Richard, yeah. I want to make the same point to Richard as to Igor. The joint working group is not a negotiating body, and we are wasting our time in that. My second point is, if Indonesia, Malaysia, and the European Union can't come to a negotiated settlement on the palm oil issue, take it to WTO. The Indonesians have started legal action against the European Union in the WTO. I would say let the WTO settle it, and we will accept whatever is the outcome of the dispute settlement system in WTO on this issue. And let's get on with it. Don't let palm oil be a stumbling block to the beginning of negotiation between ASEAN and EU for an FTA.
Ambassador Trismans, I think in the book, I also mentioned this, we should not let one issue in some way, color the whole or affect the whole relationship. And I think that again is quite clear coming from also the other authors contributing to the essays in the book. So Ambassador Igor, have you got anything to add to that discussion?
Again, I agree we need an FTA. Let me just say that we concluded 37 FTAs with partners around the world, which are already into force, 43 FTAs which are being provisionally applied. And every time we have followed the same methodology, that is first to see in a scoping exercise, what are the areas we can discuss before going into the full negotiation. So it's in that scoping exercise, which is in the case of try to identify what the parameters could be of an agreement, because in any case in a negotiation that's the same type of work that we would be doing.
Thank you. I think we should move away now from, we know it's important for us to as quickly as possible to conclude the EU-ASEAN FTA, and there need to be political will from both sides and compromises in order to make it happen. But there's a question that I thought we could wrap this up, this discussion, which is very broad, basically asking how is the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic going to reshape both regions? It's not really about the US, but how is it going to reshape the regions? And is there anything that these two regional organizations, ASEAN and EU, can do to respond to the so-called new normal of the after COVID-19? Is there any, Richard? What do you see from business? Maybe I can start with Richard, and then you can wrap up. We can wrap this up with also if you have any last minute comments or wishes for the EU-ASEAN that you can share with us before we close the panel discussion. Richard, please.
Yeah, the pandemic we haven't talked a lot about because it's been on our minds since March daily. It shows that it will show again that EU will be extending massive support to all over the world, and they forget to talk about it, right? So that is my plea. We learn you have to do good and talk about it, and now it's about lives that matter, and the companies are struggling, and we are reorganizing, we are reshaping. However, ASEAN is already the winner of the pandemic, as we can see in the GDP development figures. We are still struggling. I'm sitting here in Italy. We have 25,000 cases a day, and we are talking about crazy lockdowns again, while ASEAN is already in giving the action plan for recovery. But we will come out this together stronger with a joint vaccine and a joint program. So the EU ABC is signing a MOU to support to the logistics of distribution of medicine. We have all the pharma members in our group and all of the companies that are doing lots of good things for the people. And also we are too busy to talk about it a lot. And so it's just assume that European companies will be there to support their first, second, and third ring of people, including all the civil society and the neighbors. And I'm just so annoyed with this COVID. in the sense that we don't get our things done, we have to do the rest of our homework as well. So I really, really urge everybody to say, okay, let's get on with it and live with this. But the rest of the homework is still there. Thank you.
Thank you. Ambassador Trismans, you talk about in your opening speech about the green interest in the region, and I wonder if this dovetails to this whole green recovery post-pandemic and how EU and ASEAN can really work in this area.
Thank you very much. That was exactly the point I wanted to make. That is that there is a real convergence in the narratives, which we haven't seen for a very long time, maybe something we've never seen. That is that the narrative of building back better is used both in the EU and in ASEAN. ASEAN says we need a sustainable development. It's one pillar of its recovery plan. We need a more digitalized integration. That's another pillar. These are exactly the type of issues that we're discussing in Europe as well. And that gives us a lot of ground for future cooperation. The last thing I'd say in response to your question and how is it reshaping our regions, at least from the European Union, it has given a tremendous boost to integration. For the first time, the European Commission is borrowing money on the financial markets on behalf of the member states. That is creating a European debt at the community, at the EU level. That is an enormous step forward, something that even during the Greek crisis was never even thought of. So big boost for integration for the EU, but also a lot of scope for further work with ASEAN.
Thank you. Prof. Ko, you mentioned about the EU-ASEAN summit on the post-pandemic future. I suppose any concluding remarks on that? You have to unmute yourself.
Oh, okay. I think I made my 3 wishes. Conclude the comprehensive air transport agreement soon. Begin negotiating an ASEAN-EU free trade agreement. And third, hold an ASEAN-EU summit with 2 focal points. 1, COVID-19, vaccine multilateralism, how to prepare for the next pandemic. And the second focal point, how to bring about a recovery that is sustainable and green, as Igor said. So those would be my 3 wishes.
Thank you very much. And thank you to all the panelists for the very dynamic and interesting, robust discussion. I'll now hand the floor to our MC, Ibu Rizal.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yo, and all the speakers for the fruitful and very interesting discussion. Now, I would like to invite Her Excellency Ambassador Kok Lee Peng, the permanent representative of Singapore to ASEAN and the country coordinator for ASEAN-EU dialogue relation, to give the closing remarks. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ibu Reza, and very good morning to everyone in this conversation. I was multitasking because I actually have an ongoing meeting of the CPR, but I dropped out to give the closing remarks to this very lively and interesting debate. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, first, very warm congratulations to Prof. Ko and Dr. Yo Lei Hui for the successful launch of this book, The ASEAN-EU Partnership, The Untold Story. Very happy to see Prof. Ko looking well, and I'd like to congratulate Dr. Yo for calmly moderating the discussions. The story of ASEAN and EU relations is not as frequently told as it should be, and that's the point of this book. And I think that while ASEAN and the EU are separated by geography, we have pursued different regional strategies, and we take different positions sometimes on issues. But this book reminds us of key similarities between our two regions that are worth emphasizing. We are both committed to maintaining peace in our respective regions, and we're focused on integrating the economies of our respective member states. ASEAN and EU are also strong supporters of multilateralism and a rules-based international order. As we wrap up today's discussions, I'd like to share some thoughts on how the global pandemic we're facing has brought to the fore far more similarities than differences between us. First, we've experienced similar challenges. When the pandemic first struck, there was a tendency in both of our regions for states, for countries to act nationally and unilaterally. And the relevance and the roles of ASEAN and the EU was briefly called into question. But gradually, member states had a chance to address the most immediate. Once member states had a chance to address the most immediate crises, ASEAN and the EU became more active in our efforts to coordinate our respective regional responses. I think it's of no small value that we shared our experiences from the onset. We held the ASEAN-EU Ministerial Video Conference on COVID-19 in early March. And this was one of the first COVID-19 related dialogues which ASEAN had held with an external partner. I think both our blocs also play crucial roles in charting the course for the future recovery and resilience of our regions. At the 37th ASEAN Summit and related summits about 2 weeks back, our leaders adopted the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework as well as its implementation plan. I think this goes hand in hand with the EU's next generation EU recovery plan for a green, digital, social, and more resilient EU. Second, the pandemic has shown us that our region's future, the future of our regions is intertwined, beg your pardon, that no one is safe until all of us are safe. This underscores the need for us, for both our regions, to continue supporting multilateralism and significantly at this time, vaccine multilateralism. I'm glad that our ministers had a chance to discuss this briefly during the ASEAN-EU Post-Ministerial Conference in August. And we hope to be able to translate the discussions into tangible results in the near future. Third, the pandemic has hastened the urgency for us to address similar issues such as digitalization, the fourth industrial revolution, keeping our supply chains resilient and connected, and how to deal with climate change, to name a few. I think that further cooperation exchanges of our experiences will stand us in good stead to meet the challenges of today and tomorrow. I warmly thank our panelists and participants for attending today's book launch and panel discussion. I just want to add that I completely share Ambassador Koh's wish list for ASEAN-EU relations. I'd also like to say that it's been a real pleasure working with Ambassador Igor in Jakarta. Both of us have been doing our utmost to upgrade ASEAN-EU relations to a strategic partnership. In less than a week's time, our ministers will be meeting in the ASEAN-EU ministerial meeting on 1st of December. And we're trying to line up good outcomes for that meeting. If not for the pandemic, I would have given even odds to the conclusion of Qatar this year, and perhaps some good news on the ASEAN-EU FTA front. On the ASEAN-EU summit, I think it's definitely something we should work towards, but perhaps we can aim for a physical summit now that there's good news on vaccines and on therapeutics. A quick word on the palm oil issue, which Mr. Richard had so passionately spoken about. It's not an ASEAN-EU issue, but it's affecting ASEAN-EU relations. And I agree that something should be done. And the good news is that things are moving. So all things in good time. Diplomacy works best when it's discreet. And suffice to say to all participants that both the ambassadors of ASEAN and of the EU are doing our utmost despite the restrictions of this pandemic. With that, I'll just end my remarks here. Thank you, Ibu Reza.
Thank you very much for your closing remarks, Ambassador. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our event. Please be informed that the recording of this event will be available on the ASEAN Secretariat YouTube channel. And on behalf of the organizer, I would like to thank you for joining us today. We wish you all a pleasant day and hope to see you again next time. Thank you, everyone, and let's give all our speakers and moderator a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Rizal. Thank you, and thank you all the colleagues in ASEAN Secretariat, and thank you to all the panelists.
Thank you, Dr. Lewi. Thank you all, Excellencies.
ASEAN way is caring. ASEAN way is sharing. No matter the distance between us, ASEAN still unites as one. Our hearts tight to keep us fight as one. No harm can defeat us, no pain can frighten us, since we are always one.
Harmony is what we believe in. No one will be left behind. So we can fly as one, blow our love to the sky. Since we are always one.
Let's share our spirits to heal the world. Let our consonants speak out loud. Let the light from the east shine through the clouds. ASEAN still unites as one. Let's share our spirits to heal the world. Let our consonants speak out loud. Let the light from the east shine through the clouds. ASEAN still unites as one. Let's share our spirits to heal the world. Let our consonants speak out loud. Let the light from the east shine